What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. This week we have a new hard industrial techno tutorial with INFEED. So I'm gonna go through all of the elements that you just heard in the preview. Be sure to check the project file in the link in the description if you want to follow along with it. And already thank you so much for supporting the channel by liking, subscribing and commenting. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so let's see what we have with our kick. So of course, this genre is very kick driven. The main element is really the kick. And sometimes there's just one or two elements like a screech that kind of pops, but really the drive is given by the kick. So I'm gonna go through this kick rumble or industrial kick. Of course, I have lots of different processing on my group channel, especially lots of distortion and some limiting. So I'm just gonna present you these elements first so that you understand, because it's really key in this kind of kick to make what we aim for. So I'm having on this group channel first a utility, because I'm gonna go through all of these layers and I'm adding lots of different layers. So I'm gonna make sure I'm not already in the red, so I reduce the gain before adding a bit of distortion. So first with that blues driver from Trash 2, I think the biggest distortion is the inflator here. So I really use it as a distortion unit rather than just polishing the thing after, because I'm gonna use it 100%. What's important also is that limiter. So I'm really like making a big sausage because it's really like hard clipping, 100% hard and lots of drive. And I like this plugin, which is really good. So it's really like distorting and clipping without altering too much the kick with some compression and losing all the dynamic. So inside my group, I have two big layers. First is the punch, of course. So I'm using two different samples here. The main sample is that kick, so it's already kind of industrial kick. That was this one. So a good way to use these samples and make it your own is using kickstart. So what I did first is putting a kickstart on, only take the punch and adding that band EQ so that it will only cut the low frequencies on the second part of the kick, so on the offbeat. That way I can keep still the reverby sound and I'm gonna have a lot more coherence than after, because if I just cut like this, I'm gonna lose some drive, or it's gonna be too like a reverse bass kind of kick. So what I do is adding that kickstart, then I freeze and flatten. That way I get this kick. So it's really the punch and I still have like this reverby part. So you can still keep only the punch and then adding a convolution reverb. That's also an option. So here, that's what I did. And I'm just adding another saturator, just to distort a bit more. And I think I'm taking the same sample, the punch part, and I'm making a kind of hard punch. So as usual, what I do here is putting an EQ. So I place it at the frequency I want it to resonate. I distort a lot and then I put back this kind of EQ. So it makes this kind of hard snare. And I'm also adding a little reverb to get a bit more room. So you see I had a resonancy here, so that's why I cut it. So this is my punch. And for my rumble, so you see there's lots of layers. It's not very conventional the way I did it, but it worked. What I did is I'm just stacking lots of frequencies, lots of different kick samples, or at least rumble samples. And some of them I'm kind of EQing just to get the crunch. Like this one. I have also this one for the crunch. And there's three other parts that I use, but for the bass. So you could tell me, oh yeah, this is gonna be some phasing issue. Yes, there could be, but actually a rumble is just some phase noise. So it's just different noise, especially in the bass frequencies that are just melting together, and it creates those rumbles. And since I'm distorting a lot and clipping, it doesn't matter, because at the end I will just have like a fat kind of sausage for my kick, and I can check that afterwards when I'm just render it to audio. I can just make sure there's no phasing, and I can also check with my speakers to see if it's still pounding. So what I did here is I kind of mixed together all of these samples, and I just made sure that it was sounding okay, so using a bit of EQ, making sure my bass is in mono, and then I'm just clipping it all together. So if I withdraw this, it adds back some crunch and distortion. And so I'm just adding another grid layer here. So what I do is something that I already did for some of the tutorials, is just taking an impact and taking only the offbeat. I'm adding a pedal in fuzz mode, so it adds lots of distortion. And then I can take the grid. So it adds a bit of that reverby kind of sound. And so yeah, afterwards, with a lot of this group processing, this gives me my industrial kick that I render to audio, and I have it here. And you see that it's pretty much lots of noise and very compressed. I'm kind of using this kick. Sometimes I'm adding a few layers. So here I just use a kind of rolling kick, and I'm using it just to make another grid layer. So at first, this is this kind of kick. I'm just withdrawing the bass, sidechaining, and adding that amp to really get like the higher frequencies to be excited. And this gives me this kind of grid, this kind of noise. And I'm adding also another layer at the end to make a kind of hardcore kick. And same thing, I'm using an industrial kick. So this one is something very compressed, very raw, but with the amp, it's gonna create again those very high frequencies, and it creates that kind of a half beat for my kick. And you can try this with any kind of hard industrial kick. If I take another one, for instance, this one, it works also. I can just pitch it down, and it's gonna create those huge nasty layers. So it's a good way to emphasize even more the kick at some point if you want to go for an hardcore vibe. That's pretty much it for this kick. So next I have my glitch effects. So what I analyzed in INFEED style is sometimes using this kind of glitch to make a background for the kick. So that's what I did here. It's pretty much some random noise glitch. So to do this, I took a glitch sample from KSHMR. That was this one. And I took small parts of it just to make a half bar loop. And so I kind of played around with the pitch of those glitches. I even took like a part of a different glitch. I play with the pitch until I get something that I like. And what I do to create another glitch from a glitch is actually using the grain delay. So this reverb is just to get a bit of room. But this delay, it actually creates a new sound because I'm playing with the pitch, and since I'm pitching it down, it adds a bit more darkness vibe to the sound. Then I'm just withdrawing the sub, sidechaining, and here I just wanted to add a kind of panning effect. And together with the kick, it makes a kind of rhythm, a kind of groove. I also use some glitch at some point to make a transition. So for instance here again is just part of a glitch loop, and it's a pretty cool effect with the kick stopping and then just going back for the drop. So yeah, he's using those glitch kind of transition. Also he's using some pre-drop fills. So here just took a sample from Techno that I'm using again, but chopping up the different parts, like here and here. just to make a variation. And yeah, that's it for the background. For the kick. Afterwards, I have my leads. So for the lead, I'm having two big elements. First, the screech, and then some kind of noise claps, actually, because I used claps to make it. But it's actually just a kind of noise, or it's just a short screech, actually, because what I do here is taking a clap sample and I'm distorting it a lot to actually create noise. So it's almost a screech at that time. And then I'm just playing around with different patterns and different arpeggiator. So this one I use with that rate. So it creates this. So you see, without that distortion, it's just a clap. This clap is already a bit noisy, but here it's just really creating something like it's almost noise, and adding lots of room so that it sounds big and give a sense of space. Of course, withdrawing the bass and making sure it's not too resonating, because here it was a bit too harsh to the ears. And I'm creating a call and answer. So it's basic technique, but it always works. So I'm calling that one and answering with that one. And so for this one, I didn't use a clap. I used actually a screech. It's one of the screeches that I give for free under my Screech tutorial. And again, I'm just distorting it. It's exactly the same processing because I think I duplicated the channels. So these are the noise that I use for my first part. And then after, add the drop, and actually even in the breakdown, I'm kind of building some tension with the screech. So I'm using long bars like this. Playing around with the pitch also, so 1 octave below. And here you have some variation. So for this screech, you can check my tutorial, but this one is made out of an oscillator with 16 unison, and it's pretty much detuned. I have also noise, it adds a bit of character, and a filter to withdraw the low frequencies. Of course, lots of different effects. What's important here is really distortion and multiband compression, so OTT. After, of course, you get some delay, some EQ, and a big reverb that I use here, again, to give the same sense of space that these first elements. And I'm using another screech, again, to make a call and answer. So it's a little bit different, but it's just actually a different filter. Here it's a bandpass, and there's also a bit variation in the pitch, and you get also some distortion, compression, delay, reverb. And again, I'm using another amp here just to distort even more. You can use RTTs, very effective for the screeches. And I'm adding also a third screech. It's the same patch, it's just a different octave and different pattern. You see, I'm using also the arpeggiator, which is a really good tool, and I use it here also. So you can play around with the rates, you can play around with the patterns, and you can play around with the pitch and call and answer. So really, in that second part of the track, there's call and answer. So you see, I have my drop with the kick, first screech, call, second screech, answer. Then I have the glitch background. Then I'm making kick break with the Reese bass. Then new call and answer, different patterns, and after I'm using back my noise, clap noise, screech noise, and I bring back other drums and elements. So these are all ways to make some variation for your track. And after I bring my hardcore kick and so on. So that's what I did for the leads of this track. Now we're gonna talk about the drums. So for the drums, I kind of analyzed in INFEED track that I use some very noisy and distorted drums. Not so much drums. There's really like a large part of this track. There's only the kick and maybe sometimes one hi-hat or one kind of loop that drives the kick. So that's what I did here. And also sometimes it's using some trap hats. So that's what I've used here. So you can use any kind of trap loop for your hats, or you have a trap kit from Ableton. And what I do on this trap hat is just distorting a bit, again, to get the industrial vibe, get a bit more high-end, adding the same kind of room that I have on my other channels. So here it's just a short plate reverb, just a slight delay and sidechaining. And I have then some other drums. So I have first this hi-hat. So with that kind of pattern, you have a slight velocity movement, and I'm using 2 layers. This one, it's a bit noisy, and this one, noisy also, but it's just to kind of layer, get a fuller sound. So this one is coming from a sample, but this one, I made it from this channel. So this is a technique that I use often for industrial techno. I already show it in other tutorials, but I put a random loop, so either a perk loop or a top loop or whatever. You can use then the slice mode in the sampler, and you can use the snake, and it's gonna play different elements of this loop randomly, and you can play around also with the velocity and the gate so that it triggers only at certain times. I'm adding lots of distortion, so one heavy and one rock mode for amp, and it creates those very noisy industrial vibe. I then record it, so that's what I did here. And I used it to make and create my hi-hat. So this one is from this sample, and then I still use another amp, whatever, it just creates even more noise. And then it's just about controlling, since it's gonna make resonate a lot because of those amps, it's about controlling the frequencies and making sure it's okay in the mixing phase. So that's why I'm withdrawing those parts. You see it was a bit resonating, same thing here. So there's some specific frequencies that resonate a lot. Usually it's either 10K, sometimes 4K, and sometimes it's near 1K. So these are the frequency areas that you must look for. And those 2 different layers are just combined together. And then I'm just adding some group processing that will apply also with the open hat that I will show you after. And so it's just a drum bus to glue together. I'm adding the reverb, again, short plate reverb here. I'm controlling the transient because it was too harsh, so I'm reducing it here. So this one is free, it's a free tool and it's very effective. You can use it. And then I'm just sidechaining. And so there's just one open hat here, and it's coming from the same sample, but here it's just used as a simple open hat pattern. And it's very noisy. I put another amp and it's very effective. You can find those kind of hats in Bijou tracks also. It's almost like a snare. And yeah, just have a slight loop to give even more drive with the open hat. And this one is just a loop that I needed chopped up and make my own loop. And that's it for the drums. So I'm using those drums first here, just creating some variation, putting the trap hat, then or the open hat, then all together. And at the end, I do the kind of same thing. And now the final elements are the elements that I use for the breakdown. So first thing that I use a lot when I cut the kick is that bass morph. So here it's a sample, but I already show you how to do this in my video on Iki. So you can use a Serum patch and I can show you that Iki noise. With a wavetable, you can create those kind of sounds. So how to do this is just taking a wavetable and making move the position when it plays. You can even add another layer of wavetable that you can make some FM synthesis. There's also the filter that kind of moves. And if you want to create those very harsh sound, you just add. And there you go. And you can try different. And that way you can create and sound design those kind of morph. So yeah. This time I use this one and kind of use it sparsely in the track. And for my breakdown, so there's a kind of breakdown that INFEED does a lot. So we kind of had a pad and a kind of a harp in the background. That's what I did here. I think it's to create a contrast between the very harsh and hard part of the track and something that's more smooth in the breakdown. One thing that I didn't do, but he does it a lot, is using some vocals, and especially is using lots of trap music or rap music vocals. Kind of hats just with some chopped up vocals with the kick or some chorus in the breakdown. So here I'm just using a pad. So nothing special. I kind of took a random pad patch that I found in my bank and I'm just adding that amp. Again, it's to create a more industrial and raw vibe. So I'm in F Phrygian for my track. So I'm just using the root note, the third, the fifth, and here, that one. And so yeah, it's just a chord. But that pad was nice because it evolved again with the wavetable and with the filter so that it's not too steady and not too boring. And I'm also playing around with the auto filter so that it comes smoothly. And I'm adding the harp. So I'm using kind of the same notes in my scale. Just playing around, I made this melody. So you can see that I'm using pretty much the same note. So it's just repeating the pattern and changing a few notes here and there. And here I'm just using a plug that you can find in the basic Serum. So you have it, it's super alba. So it's just a saw wave plug, nothing special. Because INFEED use lots of those kind of plugs. And same thing, using the auto filter so that it creates a progression. And I'm accompanying this with the Reese bass. And same thing, the Reese bass is opening at the end. And I'm also making the bass come at the breakdown. And to create a more cinematic effect, I'm adding some effects. So a sweep, so that it creates the anticipation of the breakdown. Again, with the noise sweep here, an impact when the breakdown is beginning, when the kick that's filtered, it's gonna stop. So I'm using that auto filter here. And then at the end of that, I'm using all of the return channels. So in my return channel, I have my big reverb and I use it to create that sweep. And you have at the same time two impacts. Then a silence to create the tension. And then boom, we get back to the harder part of the track. So that's why I'm using the Screech that makes a kind of call and answer. And then boom, you have your drop after that and the pre-drop fill and so on. So yeah, that's what I did for this track, guys. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and I see you in the next one. Ciao, guys.